has a question. Best outcome for Miami. You have Jimmy's quote unquote people, he says, claiming the Heat have had good offers, parentheses, doubt it, or parenthetically doubt it. Just wondering where the situation goes as he is back versus the Nuggets, who, Matt, you cover on Locked On Nuggets. I failed to mention at the top, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On NBA, so many things. But they play the Nuggets Friday, and the suspension is almost up. It's kind of time. I thought when this started, Matt, that Jimmy would be moved during this period. Now I'm kind of off that, though I still think he could be moved, but it's just extremely difficult to what we were saying earlier. Like, honestly, it sucks to be a casual NBA fan, right? Like this year. Not sucks like from a standpoint of like, it's awful and the league is awful, but it's getting harder to follow, I think, if you're a casual NBA fan. And I'm getting a lot of my casual NBA fan friends being like, yo, I don't understand the CBA. There's too many threes. I don't have time for this shit. Like, wake me up in the playoffs. Yeah. But to answer Callum's point, what do you think? What do you have on this?
Okay, so I think this is really funny. The timing is always what you need to piece together. Okay, so I think it was Friday when the report came out. Hey, Heat are just going to let him back in.
Yeah,
his suspension will be lifted. They're more than fine with him coming back.
They're reportedly open to that. Yeah,
totally open. He can come in and play. We're not going to give him the money, and we're not going to trade him. But he can come on up, come back. Love to have him in the locker room. And then Tuesday, Chris Haynes goes on the spinometer and then drops this like list of grievances, including like I was on 5 Reasons with Ethan, and he was telling me something about because like I hadn't even read through it yet because honestly I'm kind of like hand motion at it, but like
he
didn't get one paycheck last year because of an HR dispute. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me?
The people who may have missed that allegedly one of his payments was delayed by like 10 days because of some sort of like an HR mishap or whatever the case happens in business.
Power bill was almost turned off. Phew! Man, I might have had to throw out the groceries in the fridge if they hadn't gotten that straightened out.
Right.
Complaining about like I had to do media after the trade the reports came out.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? But like think about the timing, right?
Yeah.
This is don't listen. This is not Jimmy trying to get you on his side. It's a declaration from Jimmy Butler of I'm still mad. I'm not over it. I want out. Make it happen. You have 3 days. And the Heat being like, well, we're not worried. It'll be fine. And covering themselves from another grievance.
Sure.
And so, like, the end point, here's this really weird. I think Pat Riley is the one organization you don't want to go up against. The only point I kind of have is, like, you got to be, like, you have to be so petty about this. Because there is a point where it doesn't become worth it. Like, just move on with your organization. Because it's also unfair. Like, this is what I always think in this trade stuff. What about the other guys? Bam Adebayo is one of the best players in the league, and his season is getting derailed by this nonsense.
He looks absolutely tired. Like, just watching him play, he looks fried.
Tyler Hero is having one of the best seasons in the league in terms of a guy popping onto the scene, most improved player candidate. He's been the best player on Miami. He's been sensational. Jaime Jaquez needs to get his game back on track. Yes. Nikola Jovic needs to keep doing whatever it is that leads his advanced metrics to look so good. When I look at the box score and I'm like, what did he do?
Yeah.
But
except for last night,
they need that. Like, and you just need to get on with basketball life.
Yes.
And so while I admire their, like, we have standards here. If you didn't want this, if you didn't want the situation, and I was talking to Ethan about this, like there were rumors a year ago they weren't going to give him the extension. There were rumors a year ago before the deadline.
Yeah.
Before the deadline. And they could have moved under cover of night and been like, whoop, moved him out, got a new core in. Hey, we're still contending. We wish Jimmy Butler the best, but we don't feel it's in our best interest to give him the extension. And fans would have been mad, but they would have gotten over it when they had a better team on the floor to start this season. This summer, hey, couldn't reach an extension. That sucks. We moved on once we realized we couldn't do a deal. Fresh start, move on. Now you're in the middle. And that's where this gets really gross and hard to figure out. How, like, everyone's stuck. Coaches, staff, players, agents, everybody's stuck in the middle. Like, if you're the Heat and you're like, well, we'd like to add, X, Y, and Z to the roster, you can't even look at deals because you've got this thing you have to figure out first. And you don't know whether you're going to be, like, you can't add another 2-guard, even if you could find a deal, because you don't know if Jimmy Butler is going to be on the team next year. Like, what if he just resolves this? And so I don't think he's going to be, but I'm just saying it is in everybody's best interest to move on. But Butler, with this, with all the stuff that came out today, that is him signaling, no, you're not, like, I'm not just going back to work.
Do you think, 2 things? One, do you think for the good of the locker room, this absolutely has to happen now? Like, they need to do the Jimmy Butler deal ASAP? And 2, do you think there's actually going to be a Jimmy Butler deal between now and the trade deadline, which is slightly over 3 weeks away as the time we're recording this?
I mean, look, the thing is, like, I'm not going to sit here and try and predict what Riley's going to do. I would think that Andy Ellsberg and Adam Simon are probably looking towards what is the best option for us long term. And Van's got a good comment in there about the 2026 free agency thing, which that really conversation, I think, started.
Van Lee says, I'll read it here. Bryan and Matt, I think the Miami front office is selling their fans a 2026 dream. More teams will start doing that. They are not getting Luka or Fox in free agency. Crying emoji. I see Luka moving to Colorado with his best buddy before Miami. I mean, you could probably speak to that last point. But
I'm not even going to go there. But what I will say is, George Sedano kind of started talking about over on 5 Reasons about how, like, free agency is going to make a comeback. And there has been, like, a little bit of this conversation around the league.
I agree with him, by the way.
Once these contracts run out and the contracts stabilize to the current CBA,
yes,
and the structure stabilize, then you'll see more cap space and the ability to do that.
Yes.
But without an amnesty provision in these, like, that's one of the things that was missing, right? The last time that we had a major change to the CBA structure, there was an amnesty clause included. And there's been no amnesty clause included in the CBA. And that's one of the reasons. Like, how quickly would the Suns just be like, I mean, we're going to amnesty Beal and we'll absorb Jimmy Butler into cap space for whatever other guys they would do whatever they needed to get it. And it may not be enough, right? They may not be enough for Miami. That's what I think is tough here, is that because Miami still, the biggest thing is that Miami has signaled basically, we want to be competitive. Okay. So you want players? Well, we don't want any big contracts. Okay, but you
literally can't do that.
You can't get good players that don't make any money. Like, it's not allowed. It's literally not allowed in this. So that's, like, that to me is the holdup here. But ultimately, look, if you want my prediction, crystal balling, is that
sure,
Jimmy comes back on Friday, they get dismantled, everything is bad.
Is he quiet quitting on Friday?
He refuses to talk to the media on the first night. He says something again explosive the next time he does media. and like, this just keeps going.
6 points on 3 of 11 shooting, no free throws.
But my role, I can't believe my role in this offense.
Speaking of mock trades, I mean, we kind of laid this out earlier, but Van Lee did ask for a mock Jimmy Butler trade based on intel. I mean, do you want to give it a shot here? You alluded to one earlier. Do you want to just run that one back?
Okay. I will give you 3 of the 4 because I do not know what the last team in this wants.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler goes to Phoenix. Bradley Beal goes to another team who drops assets to Chicago. Zach LaVine goes to Milwaukee.
Holy shit.
Milwaukee trades, let's say for now, Chris Middleton and or Brook Lopez and pieces. Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, both on the table.
Sure.
Those pieces go out. They absorb Zach LaVine. That's as far as I'm willing to go. That's what it looks like. And if you're like, well, who's the team that's going to take Beal? I'm like, that's the thing. Yeah. Like, that's, I think, is the question. Chicago doesn't want it because Chicago doesn't want the money. They want to reduce this. They want to reduce salary, not just get out of taxes. Chicago wants to just, like, not pay money. They want as low a money as possible on what they get in return. Miami said the same thing, but if you can get various things from Milwaukee, you're getting pieces that are actually might help you. Those two franchises don't exactly have the warmest of buddy relationships, but you deal with who you got to. And I think it's like it's one of those where it's like Miami and Milwaukee can do a deal. They'll both just not enjoy it. Milwaukee and Utah, or Miami and Utah, are never doing a deal, and that's like never going to happen. That's a different conversation. So that's kind of like the piece that I would say here is like if you can just find and honestly, that team might be that one, which would be hilarious with all of this. But that Utah might be like that team that's just willing to be like, sure, yeah. Well, we'll send him out. Yeah, we've got some contracts. We'll send him out. We'll take Bradley. But then the problem that you run into again is Bradley Beal has to say okay, and he's not going to say okay to Utah. So anyway, what I'm trying to say here is I don't know if I knew the Bradley Beal team, I would report on it because that's major. That's huge news that anyone that is willing to take Bradley that he's willing to go to. But that to me is like how this happens: is Jimmy goes to Phoenix and Chicago and Milwaukee are involved. That to me is the most likely outcome. Now, that said, what usually winds up happening is we think like, oh, this is absolutely going to happen. And then it's like, whoa, that's way out of somewhere else.
So. Yeah, there was a reported list out there of Bradley Beal would say yes to like the Lakers, the Heat, a couple other teams. But I mean, we ultimately don't know. And he has to say yes, otherwise it doesn't happen.
I've heard he's open to Denver, and I checked in. Oh boy. And first I got LOL no. And then I got probably not. And I was like, that's a very big difference from, I don't know. But I still think that's unlikely that he winds up there. I do know that Miami with Jimmy Butler sending him to Denver was referred to as untenable by a source. So I don't think that's going to happen. But there are my point here is like, there are all these pieces I think that could cobble together. The problem is just like when you're talking about a 5-team deal, it's so fragile and anything can fall apart at any time. And it's as simple as like a lot of this is also guys will just blow it up on agents will just blow it up on purpose because it doesn't suit their future needs for other clients. The politics of the NBA is so complicated sometimes, and nobody really knows like how much that stuff goes on behind the scenes. And I don't see the whole board. I see like I'm like outside the door peeking through the keyhole. And even what I see, I'm just like, Jesus, there's a lot that's going on here.
Okay, let's wrap on this. This is actually a question that I have. So thank you, 21 Alex, for the alley-oop. Pat sending Jimmy to Canada like Pop did Kawhi. Can another team actually, like, they're making it seem like, because remember, Jimmy Butler allegedly was saying, hey, I want to play anywhere but Miami. And then it quickly became Phoenix or I'll hurt you myself with my bare hands.
Right.
And I'll bite you in the ear, Mike Tyson style / Edgar Berlanga style, because he also did that a few years ago. Idiot. Do we think another team would actually do this, whether or not Jimmy Butler wants it to happen? Because he does not have a no trade clause.
Yeah.
He just has threats, a lot of verbal threats.
I think it's tough. He's done I will say this. I'm impressed with the fact of how he's managed this, because I thought initially I was like, you don't want to go to the mattresses with Pat Riley. And I will say he's done a phenomenal job, because what he did was when he torched Spo, like I was talking to an assistant coach who just said, I couldn't believe it. None of my friends could believe it in the coaching industry. Like, you really, like this guy who's been in his corner, who has backed him, who is one of the classiest dudes, who doesn't brag, who's not arrogant, who comes in, does the work, has worked his way up. That's who you go after. And if you're the rest of the coaches, anyone that's got any sort of ear in the front office and ownership has to be like, no, this guy's going to get me fired. No, I cannot coach this guy.
Right.
He's not what we need. You don't couch it like that. You just say like, he's good, but he's getting older, and I'm just not sure he's what our locker room needs right now. Right.
Sure.
And that's how you phrase it. And because most coaches are political beings as well. The ones that flame out are usually ones that don't get that. Is there a chance? I do think so. Like, I do think that there's an opportunity where one of the things I keep thinking about is, what if somebody just does the deal to get themselves out of the second apron by dumping money? They find somebody to dump the money, and it's hard because of the 100% aggregation, but they find a way to do it. They dump the money, and that gets them into the apron, and then they can maneuver and trade more players. Like, would somebody make that kind of jump? What franchises are like so daring to be willing to take on the risk of Jimmy Butler? And there's just like, there's very, 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 very few. There's just very few of those. But I do think that like there's a handful. I just can't name them. Like, do I think that's a Laker type move? Absolutely, 100%. If you ask JJ Redick, he'd be like, yeah, I could do it. Jimmy Butler's amazing. He's incredible. We'll make it work. I got LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We'll figure it out.
Would someone trade for him and waive him? Because
yes,
that is a mechanism someone could actually, like a Charlotte who we mentioned earlier, who could be like, yeah, fine, we'll just do it and then get rid of him.
I'm just saying, like, again, I think Chicago would be open to that possibility.
And just buy him out.
Yeah, just buy him out. Just pay the rest of it and be like, vaya con Dios. If he's willing to agree to it, right? And then what would be really interesting there is he gets to then choose if he wants to pick up with somebody else that's got the ability to do so, which again they can't do if there's over the second apron. But like any of those first apron teams could go out and just add Jimmy Butler for the playoff run, and be like, you can rehab your value here going into your free agency. Yeah, that'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's where I think of like maybe Toronto, like that's like a very interesting idea. Is like Toronto is like a very interesting concept. But I think there's probably like a few others that would probably be at least willing to facilitate those kind of ideas. There's just I will say like there's just like a lot of teams that want to get off of money. Like that's the biggest thing at the deadline is they want to get off of money. The problem is like you can't, if all of you want to get off of money, you can't trade with each other because you're all trying to move the same stuff and it doesn't work. So we'll see what happens.